Today is December 11th, 2003. We're at the Grand Island Veterans Home in Grand Island, Nebraska. I'm speaking with Lee Lueth. And Lee is giving us an interview for the Veterans History Project. Lee, could you tell me when were you born, where were you born, and just a little bit about your family that you grew up in?
I was born here in Grand Island in 1924, and I lived in Grand Island all my life until I went into the service. And actually, I went to high school here and everything, and I was just at the right age to go into the service, so I decided to quit high school and join the Navy. I did that on my birthday on November 29th. Thought it'd be pretty safe going in the Navy, and then here comes along the attack on Pearl Harbor. So
you joined before the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Right, well, yeah, I'd signed up before then, but I wasn't in there yet. I actually got into in boot camp in January 1942, I believe it was.
Where was boot camp at?
Great Lakes Naval Training Center.
And how long were you there?
About 8 weeks. And I went to Hospital Corps School there. And then I was transferred to San Diego, California, to the Naval Hospital, and I worked in the dermatology department. And then I wasn't there very long, and they transferred me to the 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines, and they had a camp out on the desert there, and I went out there and trained with them for probably 6 or 8 weeks, and just combat training. And then they put us on a ship and took us to Wellington, New Zealand. And we trained there for about, imagine a couple of months. And so then the next phase of our training was actual combat. So they sent us in to help mop up on Guadalcanal. And after that, went back to New Zealand, trained for a while more, then went to Saipan. And I was in the 4th wave going into the beach there at Saipan. And I lost a lot of my friends and stuff on that landing. It was quite an experience going in there in that Higgins boat. And when you got to the shore, the old front end came down. You never knew what was going to hit you. And so we had to land out in the water, probably a quarter of a mile, and I had to walk ashore from there. And by evening, we'd established a beachhead.
When that boat, the end of the boat actually came down, what did you see? What greeted you when that?
Well, you knew that the enemy was right out there, and you could expect gunfire and mortar shots and things like that coming in at you. In fact, they were coming at you before you even stopped the boat. And so we got in there, and we...
And so what is the first thing you remember seeing when that boat landed?
Well, first thing I saw was the beach, and the road beyond the beach, and the railroad track beyond that. We went in, and fought until we established a beachhead for the night right before we got to the railroad tracks. And so we just had a little piece of the island when we got in there. And then,
how far was the enemy from you?
oh, I imagine they were probably half a mile away. And the gunfire most of the time. The next morning, they sent some Sherman tanks in from the ships. So we got behind them and went on forward, and finally we got into the thick of the fighting and everything, and got to see some little towns on Saipan.
Little town?
Towns, yeah, Garapan and that, and we never did meet any of the natives on there, and we after those tanks got in there and we moved forward, we pretty well secured the island, and it was just mainly every day and night to night fighting, and you could I still can't stand the smell of citronella. The Japanese soldiers wore citronella to keep the mosquitoes away, and they'd be down there in the valley, and they would signal each other by tapping the end of their rifles with a shell, and signaling each other.
Kind of like a Morse code.
Yeah.
What was the strategic value of Saipan? Why did we go into that island in the first place? What was?
Well, we were actually, I think, trying to get over to Okinawa and then in there, but we had to secure Saipan for landing strips and bases where we could assemble to go on from there. When we finished there, they put us on a ship. We went back to Honolulu, and had a nice little stay there. And then they put us on a ship and went to Tarawa. And that was just a little dot of an island in the ocean there. And, I don't think it was over a half mile wide and a mile long. It was a bloody, bloody battle. We lost a lot of guys there, and that battle was over probably within 24 hours. And then we kind of bivouacked there for a while, and then I went up as the Gilberts is a chain of islands, and you can walk almost from one to the other. So they put me on a half track, and I was to go up there and purify water for the troops and for the natives up there. And I spent my 21st birthday doing that. And actually that was kind of fun. I got to meet some of the natives, and I met their doctor they had on the island. He was educated in Samoa. And they'd put on hula dances for us at nights, and it was kind of enjoyable up there.
This was on Saipan?
Yes. No, this was at Tarawa.
That was a very small island.
Yeah. See, we went up that whole chain of islands and secured the whole thing. And then from there we went back to Hawaii, and I guess I got mixed up here a little bit. We went to Tarawa before we went to Saipan. So after we were in Hawaii for a while, we got on some landing crafts and went over to Saipan. And I don't know, they were telling us before we left that there may have been sabotage on some of the boats because these landing boats had other smaller boats on top of them on the upper deck, and they just packed us in there, and you sleep under it or in the other boats or wherever you could find a place. And that night a storm came up, and we lost about 2 or 3 of those boats on top, and we picked up a survivor, and I had to watch over him in sick bay. And I don't know, I guess I got to see just about everything there was to see over there, that as far as blood and maim and guts and injuries and illness. Had malaria 13 times.
You had malaria?
Yeah. And then let's see, we went. Well, we went from Saipan to Tinian. There was a little island off to the side of Saipan. And when I was over there, I contacted jaundice acute infective, so they flew me back to Honolulu, the Naval Hospital there. And then they shipped us by ship back to the United States to Seattle, Washington, and I was on the hospital staff at the Naval Hospital there for about a year. I was actually a scrub nurse for eye, ear, nose, and throat department. And right when we got back, well, Eleanor Roosevelt had said that we weren't fit to be with people, so they put us on a mild psycho ward for about a month, and then I went to work at the hospital there. Then after that, I was thinking about rejoining the Navy, but then they shipped me to Norfolk, Virginia to independent duty school. I was supposed to learn to work on submarines and things where they didn't have a doctor.
And for you, the combat portion of your service pretty much ended with that island hopping and going to Saipan, is that?
Yeah.
And then you ended up going back stateside.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we went from Saipan to Tinian, which I say is just a little island, a little ways away. And that pretty well ended it. They flew me back to Honolulu.
How did you feel about leaving the front to go back home? How did that?
I was very happy about it.
How long was it before the war ended?
Oh. See, the war ended December 45, I think. And it must have been maybe a little over a year before the war ended. I got home and worked in the hospital there.
So you didn't end up rejoining that?
No. No.
Tell me about where you were or how you felt when you heard that the war had actually ended.
First, on VJ night, the night the war ended, we were in Seattle, and we all got liberty and went into town and raised hell and had a good time dancing in the streets and just, yeah, it was really something to see.
Were there any special ladies in Seattle for you at that time?
Special ladies?
Special ladies, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was going with a little nurse trainee there at the hospital, and she was about the most special one. And there were a lot of them, but we did a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, and a lot of raising hell. And
how did you end up coming back to Nebraska? What happened? How did that come about?
well, I was discharged there at Norfolk, Virginia, and then they sent me to St. Louis, and I caught a train back to Grand Island.
And did you go to work right away somewhere, or?
No, I just goofed around for a while, and like I say, we did a lot of drinking and carousing and stupid things, and stayed out of jail though. And then when I did go to work, well, first of all, I decided to go to university for a while. So I went to university for a year. Then I came back home and worked on the fire department for 7 years. And
that would have been about what dates that you worked on the fire department?
oh, that was probably about 46 to almost 50. And then I decided I could do a little better, so I went down to the library and got some books on bookkeeping and accounting. Studied up on that for a while. My father-in-law was a timekeeper out at the ordnance plant, so I got a job out there as a timekeeper. And then finally, from then on, I just got into the accounting and bookkeeping business, and finally ended up as a controller for Farmers Union Co-op and Redmond Industries. After I settled down a little bit.
At what point did you meet your wife?
I met her while I was working out at the ordnance plant, because her dad was the chief accountant out there and timekeeper. And he brought her back from Illinois, and we met. Well, I didn't meet her. She met my sister, who worked at Wallbach's, and my sister introduced us, and then from then on we just went together.
And what year did you get married then?
Ooh, I've been married 52 years, so you figure that out. Probably about 1950, around there.
If I could back up just a minute, back to your military career here. Now, what was the battalion or regiment or division or unit that you were?
2nd Battalion, 6th Marines.
And what was the highest rank that you had achieved?
Pharmacist mate, 2nd class.
Now, I don't exactly understand.
Well, see, the Marine Corps didn't have a medical corps, so they shipped us from the Navy to the Marine Corps. We wore their uniforms and everything, but we had our petty officer chevrons and things that we wore on our uniform. But we wore all the uniforms except the dress blues, and they never did let us wear those.
medals or special service awards that you received while you were in the military?
Yeah, I received the Asiatic Pacific ribbon and the American Theater ribbon, Good Conduct Medal, the Bronze Star, and Presidential Unit Citation with I think 3 or 4 stars in it. Yeah.
The Bronze Star, what is that? What is that for?
It was for, it said on my award that it was for calmness and coolness and under fire and at Saipan. Because we had to rush out here. We were on the front lines right with the companies of Marines. In fact, I belonged to Easy Company, and we lived and stayed with them there, and it was our job to get out there as soon as we'd see one of them fall, get out there and start patching them up and putting a tag on them, and then people came along and picked them up and took them to the battalion aid station, and from there they went to a hospital ship or home.
So if you were the medical person, you weren't necessarily carrying a gun, or were you?
Yeah, we finally got to where we got to wear sidearms, and then after that we carried those small carbines, and we were, according to the Geneva Convention, we weren't supposed to wear guns, but there in the Marines, you know, they'd march and in platoons and things like that. Well, the officers would be in the front of the platoon and the corpsman in the back. And the Japanese figured that out pretty quick, and they started shooting the first guy, the last guy. So they finally decided they'd give us a gun and put us somewhere in the middle of the ranks.
So you were a target even though you were a medical personnel?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I had a bullet hole through my collar. I was out taking care of some guy on Tinian one morning, and all of a sudden I felt my head kind of jerk back, and I looked down, there's a bullet hole through my collar. But that's the closest I come to being wounded. I'm kind of glad to get back to civilian life and putting my life together.
Apparently there was some kind of a program that Eleanor Roosevelt started to help bring people back into society.
Well, yeah, that was the thing, right?
Did everybody go through that?
I don't know. It just happened right before I got back, so they just put us all in a mild cycle ward, and we stayed there for a couple of weeks, and then I started working in the hospital.
Did you feel like you needed that time and space to gather yourself back together?
Yeah, I think it was a good idea.
And over the years, have you been able to put this experience in perspective and deal with it, or has it been a reoccurring issue for you?
Oh, some of it is reoccurring, and like I don't like to have people walk up behind me, and I'm startled when they do, and if there's a loud backfire or something from a car, it bothers me there. And I still have dreams once in a while of some of the action.
Even at this point in your life?
Yeah.
At the age of how old are you?
79.
70. You mentioned the citronella candles that the Japanese used.
Well, it was citronella oil they'd put on themselves to keep the mosquitoes off. because they were down there in a draw where there's a lot of mosquitoes and everything, and boy, the odor of that just drifted up to us, and then to make it worse, they'd harass us by tapping on their rifle butts with a cartridge, and you could hear one of them over here, and then another one down the line a ways, and another one down the line, and some of the noise would start coming back toward you. We were in a lot of mortar fire, especially over Guadalcanal when we were just at a bivouac there. I mean, a rest in there, and at night we had a lot of mortar fire. I remember one night up on the hill there that we ran into thick mortar fire. One guy was in his foxhole but had his knee sticking up above it, and apparently a piece of shrapnel just came along and took his knee right off. It just looked like hamburger.
When you're dealing with mortar fire, how were you trained to try to avoid it, or was there any?
There's no way you could avoid it. I mean, that's when I was probably more afraid of it than anything, that one of the shells would land in the hole with me. And as long as you kept down and kept your head down, the explosion would go up to the sides of you. And
And it's been quite a few years now since the end of your military career. As you look back now, what sense of accomplishment do you have, or how do you feel about your experience? Do you think it was worthwhile? What perspective do you put on all of that?
well, I found it's just a lot of good experience on how to protect yourself and how to take care of people that were in trouble, and you actually didn't have time to think about yourself. And I think it's
Do you feel the world became a safer place after the war?
yeah, I do. Yep. I don't think we wasted our time.
Do you have any thoughts on the current world situation?
Yeah, I do. I don't think we should be over there. I don't think it's a war. I think it's a police action. And I think that you're not fighting a country, you're fighting a bunch of little groups. And in fact, you don't know who you're fighting. I feel so sorry for those guys.
How do you think we should be responding to the threat or the situation over there?
Well, I think that we went about it all wrong, and we should have got some allies to work with us, and the United Nations and everything, and should have went in there and tried to clean it up that way with some, military police type people.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add to
Well, only thing I'd like to see is that we'd pull these guys out of Iraq and redo this thing altogether and try to do it right for a change. And like I say, they don't know who their enemies are over there. They might be talking to some civilian or something. He might have a bomb on him and explode it, and you just don't know. If it was a country, we could just fight them and get it over with. But boy, this is going to take a long, long time, I'm afraid.
Can you tell me, you came to the Veterans Home this year. What was the date that you came to live at the Veterans Home here in Grand Island?
What day?
Yeah.
I don't really remember. I don't know, the last year I've been in and out of rehabilitation centers and hospitals, and I think it must have been in early October when I came.
Things have changed for you. What kinds of things do you look forward to at this point in your life?
Oh, I think I look forward just to being waited on and babied. I think nurses really do a good job of taking care of us.
You enjoy having somebody take care of you at this point?
Yeah. Yeah, I had 7 children that we raised and took care of those all of our lives, and I think it's about time now to rest. And I enjoy being here at the Vets Home. I think it's a nice place. I enjoy the activities we have, and it still gets kind of boring, and especially on weekends when you don't have anybody come up to see you and stuff like that. But thank God for television.